Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this interesting conversation. My name is Niko Switek. I'm a visiting professor at UW and I teach German and European politics. In my brief talk, I want to inspect the role of anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial in the AfD, the most recent addition to the German party system. Let's start with a brief historical overview. Of course, anti-Semitism was a core pillar of the German Nazi Party and their fascist rule in the 1930s and 40s. But anti-Semitic attitudes predated the Nazis and naturally did not vanish right away after Germany was defeated and democracy was reestablished. This table shows the answer to the question if it would be better to not have any Jewish people living in Germany, and you can see that in 1952, there's still an unpleasant high number of 37% of Germans that agree with this statement. We see that the numbers steadily decline over time, and in 1998, we have very similar numbers for West and East Germany, about 8 to 10%. How does this correspond with the evolution of the German party system? There was a high fragmentation in the first free election in Western Germany in 1949, but the party system quickly converged to three major political parties: the Social Democrats, SPD, that had already existed in the Weimar Republic, and two new parties, the Christian Democratic Union and the Free Democrats, FDP. As a result of the prior democratic breakdown, the party system was somewhat cut off at the edges by elite consensus, but also by a strong mandate for the Constitutional Court to ban extremist parties. And I tried to mark the accepted policy space on this slide. The Union and FDP nevertheless integrated some former Nazis in their ranks, so you can see they somewhat extend in that far-right realm. The nationalist wing left the FDP and the party moved to the center of the party system, which was most visible through their decision to form a coalition government with the Social Democrats. Also in the 1980s, the Greens joined the party system, mainly focused on environmental issues, but they also drew activists from smaller communist radical left groups, so extending a bit into that left extremist sphere. Subsequently, the Greens shifted into a center-left position, but there was another new party on the left, the successor of the former East German State Party, made up of different factions, some with distinctly left extremist, socialist, anti-capitalist positions. And as part of this extremism, there is a subtle resurfacing of anti-Semitism. There is a group in the left that is very critical of Israel and calls for absolute solidarity with Palestine, which is not per se anti-Semitic, but the demands and rhetoric of that group at times cross that line. In the current phase of the German party system, we finally see the AfD, which was founded in 2013, and since 2017 is represented in parliament in the Bundestag. It is described as far-right, right extremist, right populist. In my figure, you can see that it clearly extends into the far-right spectrum, but let's take a closer look at the party. The AfD started as a Eurosceptic party, focused on abolishing the euro, the common currency in Europe, and the name actually references a quote from Angela Merkel that there is no alternatives to stabilizing the euro in the euro crisis, and the AfD wanted to present that alternative option. Accordingly, the campaign poster in 2013 read, "Yes to Europe, no to a debt union." However, the party changed radically in 2015. It pivoted to the right as a reaction to the refugee crisis, and the original founder and a large group of members left the party. And the second campaign poster I have here exemplifies this change. So it translates to the Islam does not fit to the German cuisine, which you might know often includes pork, and Muslims do not eat pork. So clearly anti-immigration, anti-Islam positions are now part of the platform. On a side note, it is a strange poster. I mean, who would openly admit to enjoy eating such a cute piglet? The anti-Islam stance was strategically used to court Jewish people, positioning themselves as defending them against refugees from Arabic Muslim countries that might harbor anti-Semitic sentiments and bring them to Germany. Also, quantitative programmatic analysis confirm this shift of the AfD's position. So you can see that from a rather centrist position on social cultural issues in 2013, there's a massive shift to the traditional authoritarian pole of the party system in 2017. A driver for this were the Eastern German regional branches of the party. Notorious is the leader of the AfD in Thuringia, Björn Höcke, who you can see here. And he held an infamous speech in Dresden in Saxony in 2017, where he stated that there needs to be a 180-degree turn in how Germans look at the past. And he added that the Germans are the only nation that planted a memorial of shame in their capital. And here he talks about the Holocaust memorial right next to the Brandenburger Tor in Berlin. And those arguments, this rhetoric is closely aligned with radical right extremist groups that glorify Germany's fascist past. After this speech, the AfD national leadership attempted to force him out of the party, but failed as he has strong support in Thuringia and in the party as a whole. Several times, Höcke insinuated that he might run for position of chairman of the party, and this would complete the programmatic shift we've seen and signal a distinct placement in the extremist right spectrum of the party system. So is Höcke's rhetoric only a fringe position and not representative for the party? Definitely not. If you look at the results from a study that surveyed anti-Semitism by party affiliation, so this somewhat updates the numbers on our first slide while also breaking them up by party. This is a different measurement. So the survey items are grouped into classical and Israel-focused anti-Semitism. For classical, the statements, for instance, are the influence of Jewish people in the society is too strong. And a statement for the anti-Israel anti-Semitism is Israel actions against Palestinians compared to what the Nazis did to Jews. And the AfD exhibits significantly the highest percentages. Nearly half of the AfD voters go along with Israel-focused anti-Semitism, and nearly 20% harbor classical anti-Semitic positions. However, we could say that the numbers for Israel-focused anti-Semitism are rather worrisome high for all parties. Yet, an interesting finding, and that somewhat substantiates my argument with the party system, is that voters for the established parties have a lot lower values than non-voters. So we see that AfD party affiliation fuels anti-Semitism, but affiliation to the other parties diminishes it. So there was a two-step process to the foundation of the AfD. The right turn happened once the party was already established. There are two major factions inside the party, and the radical right resorts to neo-Nazi and neo-fascist language. This expands the sphere of the political discourse and brings anti-Semitic rhetoric into the public, and it attracts voters with anti-Semitic attitudes. The way forward for the party is unclear. There could be a split, in which case both groups might fail to reach the electoral threshold. On a positive note, we saw that the other established parties, even if they at times extend into extremist fringes, curb anti-Semitic attitudes in the electorate. So thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A.